NDTV Control All Defense, powered by IFCO Tokyo. So good to see you on episode 13 of Control Alt Defense, India's most listened to and watched podcast on military, aerospace, and defense. Vishnu and I today are putting the spotlight on something that is very, very close to our hearts. It's a story that made the headlines this week, and it's something that people feel very strongly about, though I've got to say right at the start, maybe not everyone knows enough about this to feel so strongly about it. We're talking about the MiG-21 fighter.
Yeah.
We're talking about the MiG-21 fighter, and I know for a fact that the moment I said MiG-21, the chances are very high that you already have a picture in your head. Maybe it's Rang De Basanti, maybe it's Kargil, maybe it's the 1971 war, but there is a sense that you have strong feelings about it. And this episode is very, very special because it isn't just Vishnu and me this week. We have with us, and we're very happy to have with us, Anchit Gupta, who is an investor, but to us, he is one of India's best known historians on the Indian Air Force. He's written extensively on the most incredible details of the Indian Air Force.
He's an av geek.
He's an av geek in the real sense of the word. He's a guy who has spent an incredible amount of time speaking to the people from the Air Force, especially from the pages of history. And I love reading all of the things he's written about. And the reason why we've invited him out here today, Vishnu, is because I think few people have looked at and tracked the journey of the MiG-21 through the Indian Air Force over its incredible, 62 years?
Yeah. 1963 is when
Yes.
the first
Wow.
jets came into India.
Yeah.
2026 now, 62 years, right?
That's right.
And Vishnu, I mean, it's amazing because as we start this conversation, Anchit has this incredible habit of putting out these very, very nice, evocative Twitter threads. And this is a 19-tweet thread that he's put out, which gives us the most magnificent structure for today's conversation. And I want to start immediately with that. And Vishnu, I know, is bursting with questions. He's been trying to fly a MiG-21 for a really long time.
I'm 6'2", so that would never really work
Oh my
out for
God.
me.
Yeah, I think he's flown everything else in the Air Force. But time's running out, Vishnu, because they
I
retire.
won't fit into it yet.
They retire in September.
They stop flying in a couple of months.
Couple of months. 2 months left for the MiG-21s.
And I don't think I'd qualify for the ejection seat on weight grounds either.
There are only 2 months left. September 19th is what we're hearing is going to be the final day of the MiG-21s after a 62-year run in the Indian Air Force. But I'd like to start by getting one thing out of the way because like I said, when one says MiG-21, there's a very good chance that the phrase, and I hate this phrase, flying coffin comes to mind. Thanks in no small part to popular culture, the media's coverage of the high number of crashes of the MiG-21, the manner in which it has been portrayed, in the press over the years. But there is of course an element of truth to this very unsavory sobriquet that the MiG-21 has attracted. And I want to start that off by asking Anchit, because this incredible tweet essay, if I can call it that, starts by saying, this right here is the real reason the MiG-21 earned the flying coffin tag. No, it wasn't the LCA delay. No, it wasn't the machine or spares itself. The real cause lies deeper. The data and context are all here. And in that tweet, he's put a picture of an aircraft. I won't tell you what aircraft it is. Most people looking at this picture know what it is, but it's not the MiG-21. And I'm going to let Anchit kick it off from there. Anchit,
Thank you.
why is this not a flying coffin?
Yeah. No, thank you, Shiv. I think, to begin with, the MiG-21 is extremely close to my heart. And I saw my father fly it. We used to live at the bases. That was our alarm in the morning to wake up. I remember 1986, Operation Brass Tacks. My father was in Bhuj, going into the trenches and counting the aircraft coming back to the base. So there is an emotion to MiG-21 for all of us. And yet I pride myself in looking at data dispassionately. And so I wanted to make sure that I look at data when I come up to a platform and talk about whether the MiG-21 deserves that or not. Um, and the data is very difficult to look through. At the outset, we had 800 to 1,000 aircraft manufactured and flown during the 62 years, and we lost 300 of them. That is a very sobering statistic. But there's no time lapse to that statistic, and therefore people struggle to make sense of it. I think the answer very much lies in what we did with the aircraft. The aircraft was acquired for a very, very limited role, to be honest. It was a high altitude interceptor. The original design of the MiG was to intercept the U-2, fire a missile, and move off. And they used to wear these pressure suits to fly that. The first pictures that you see of the 28 Squadron pilots, they're wearing this pressure suit to fly it because that was the only role. And yet, at the end of the 60 years of flying, we have used it in every imaginable way that we could think of. Ground attack, fighter reconnaissance, interception, air defense. But one role, which it wasn't absolutely meant to and we used it, was as a trainer, was as a jet trainer.
No, you're quite right, because if you look at the basic configuration of the jet trainer, the MiG-21U or variants of the MiG-21U, uh, the MiG-21 is a small aircraft. In terms of rear cockpit visibility, it was extremely strained. They had a periscope sight, they still do. And even for the pilot up front, who would be the trainee pilot, it's always a difficult aircraft to fly, not least of all because you're landing at more than 300 kilometers per hour. And I think what Anchit really focused on, Shiv, in that tweet, and we can really get into that, is that we have had consistently, and let's be clear about it, a pathetic process of acquiring aircraft.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't just high-end fighter aircraft, it's basic jet trainers. From the very onset, and what he makes the point about, which is important, and I'll bring him in on this, is that when the MiG-21 first entered service in reasonable numbers, uh, only the best pilots who had been around for a decade or so, think about that, were put on the MiG-21. Why? Because it was an immensely difficult aircraft to fly. This isn't to say it didn't have merit, it had plenty of merit. That's a separate point. But down the road, as the numbers went into the hundreds, and ultimately more close to 1,000 odd MiG-21s either bought or largely manufactured in India, we didn't go beyond the Iskra trainer. We went on to the Kirin, of course. Neither of these were an optimal solution. When did the first Hawk enter service?
2007.
And since then, what has the crash rate been? It's plummeted.
Plummeted.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But Anchit, I want you to paint that picture for
Yeah.
us from the 80s till the 2000s
Yeah.
of what happened when we didn't have those trainers to fill that gap and what the accident rate then was, which I'm guessing is when this whole flying coffin thing happened.
Yeah, I think it's very much linked to our procurement in a very different way. In a different tweet, I'd mentioned that our combat squadron sanction strength went from 8 squadrons in 1947 to nearly 40 squadrons by 1965. Now, you've sanctioned it. How do you acquire? And so we were huffing and puffing to acquire more aircraft. And MiG-21 came out of nowhere with USSR saying, listen, I'll do technology transfer, you manufacture it locally. And it was something that really fell on our laps and saying, let's do this. This is our only way of getting to that sanction strength really quickly. And so in the 60s, we started to build up our squadrons. As I mentioned, from 1963 till 1971, we had got now 8 squadrons. Out of roughly our 34, 35 squadrons by then were MiG-21 squadrons. Manageable. We could manage by the experienced pilots, Vishnu, you spoke about. We could still get people who had flown the Hunter, which was the other jet trainer of repute that we had, to come and move into the fleet. It was standard for Hunter pilots to move in. It became tougher when you had Tufani pilots trying to get into this fleet, or even for that matter, Nat pilots trying to get in.
I want. Sorry to interrupt, but I want to understand that just a little bit better. When you say a Tufani pilot or a vampire pilot having to move into a MiG-21, what does that switch look like in terms of pilot experience?
See, it's the biggest difference is speed.
Yeah.
The speed at which you're performing the maneuvers, the actions that you're doing dramatically changes. That is the biggest difference. Whether it is mid-air maneuvers whether it is landing or whether it is taking off. And so it is not that pilots can't do it. You're absolutely right. All pilots can do it. It's a little bit of training that is required to just adjust to that. They put in air defense pilots which have the best reflexes because the decisions are being taken at split seconds. And that split second is the difference between flying a Vampire and flying a MiG-21.
I
So,
also think it's important, to point out that there are certain flight regimes where all variants of the MiG-21 have been very difficult to fly. There are certain things at certain speeds and at certain altitudes you just will not do. You're trained and programmed and reprogrammed not to do things in a MiG-21. There are certain angle of attack limitations, as for starters. There are sequences, there are maneuvers that you could do, which could end up, with you having a flame out, right? And then in a MiG-21, trying to get an engine relight, it's a tricky process. It's an extremely fast. It's extremely unforgiving in particular scenarios like that. That said, if you avoided those scenarios and flew the plane where you could fly it, assuming it was a reliable one, it would fly circles around enemies,
absolutely.
against the opposition. And I'm only talking about the air defense or air superiority role. This was a Mach 2 plus fighter. Mind you, if you flew it at Mach 2, your engine life was going to go down really fast. But it flew like a rocket. It was immensely fast. It didn't have legs. Even now, it doesn't really have the legs. It doesn't really have the range. But in terms of getting up into the skies, if you've got a good ground controlled intercept sort of system, engaging targets, which is what we did earlier on, from an altitude, getting them and dealing with them using first or second generation Russian Soviet air-to-air missiles, or the very reliable still JSH-23 gun, the MiG-21 is fairly unstoppable.
Yeah. When these young pilots, Anchit, I think what we can be clear about is that the MiG-21 was an incredible fighter. It was an incredible fighter that India was able to acquire and build at scale. At one point of time, it was about 50, half your fleet was the MiG-21, which basically meant that many more flight hours and therefore correspondingly perhaps the number of crashes as well. And that in some sense also explains the high number of accidents that took place. But I want you to throw a little bit of light, and Vishnu, you can also jump in here after Anchit, on understanding why that little bit of training was so crucial. That we're talking about split seconds, and for the public to understand that is crucial in my view before these aircraft actually retire, because there is a sense also, Anchit, that there's it's a little bit of an injustice to a machine after all,
Yes.
which maybe crashed this many times as a result of bad planning or not being able to get the right kind of trainers quickly for your younger pilots. What did those split seconds mean? What did pilots actually experience?
Yeah. So I'll bring in our training regime a little bit to bring that out. When we became independent, we used to have a conversion training unit where budding fighter pilots used to go after the basic training on a Harvard, later on an HT2, um, and it used to fly the Spitfires. We had and that was a piston engine. In early 1950s, we moved to acquiring Vampires in very large numbers. HAL manufactured them. It was the first HAL manufactured jet. That allowed us to move Vampires to a training conversion role. So for the entire period of 1950s and 60s, we ended up acquiring Hunters, Canberras, Nats, Mystairs, but the basic jet training was on Vampires. It was subsonic. It could give you some sense of what fighter flying is, but as you kept expanding, you went from Mystair or Tufani to a Hunter to then the MiG-21. The gap between the Vampire and the MiG-21 started to expand. Just the capability gap, the engine gap, the RCA started to change, the shape started to change. Right now, how do you bridge that gap? How do you get a fighter pilot or a pilot who has 18 months of flying a few hundred hours on very different basic aircraft straight into a MiG-21? That is the gap. And as you keep doing that, the gap expands. Imagine this: India had a very large Nat and Ajit fleet. And we did reasonably well with that fleet despite all its challenges. it did not have a trainer.
Yeah.
The hunter used to behave as the trainer for the gnat. People never. A pilot sitting in the gnat went solo the first time he flew alone, but you couldn't do that with a MiG-21.
No.
That is the difficulty. That is the gap that you had to bridge. So very early in 1966, the Indian Air Force converted 45 Squadron to MiG-21s based at Chandigarh with the single role: please convert other fighter pilots onto the MiG-21.
Yeah.
For a period of nearly a decade, all pilots who flew MiG-21 had been through 45 Squadron.
Yeah.
That's the gap.
But I will tell you this, Shiv. Through a career of as long as I've been around 30 odd years, it's these very sad MiG-21 crash stories which have dominated the media. And in as much as we can now sit back and explain the reasons why it took place, and I believe that, what the reasons Anchit has identified are entirely accurate. I feel terrible when, for example, I speak to Kavita Gadgil.
Yeah.
The mother of a young pilot who was killed tragically in a MiG-21 crash. Every single year, till a few years back, she would call me and she would say that, I'm thinking about my son and I see you, and, you were also very young, and there are families.
She put up a Facebook
Yeah.
post in April this year
Yeah.
after that Jaguar crash as well.
And so there is a human side and a tragedy. And I don't think the Indian Air Force is remotely in denial about this, because these are IF families, these are IF friends, IF pilots, colleagues, all of that. So there is a sense that it's not just hunky dory, rah rah rah, MiG-21, Mark II, and let's shoot down some Pakistani F-16s. It is a sense of regret at certain levels, right? Of losing your friends, your colleagues.
Absolutely. It's a big regret. It's a big regret. No one likes to. They love the aircraft, but they love their colleagues more. And every life lost is a story that remains etched on the psyche forever. I think the human element is actually made worse off by how we categorize the loss, and I alluded to that in my tweet, where we call it human error aircrew.
Yeah.
Where we actually, to the family or to a civilian, it sounds like we are blaming the pilot. And then the emotion comes out. The guy had barely started flying. This is an unforgiving aircraft. The aircraft has problems. And now you have the audacity to blame the pilot and say human error. Now, Air Force doesn't mean human error in the way people interpret it.
Yeah.
But people are entitled to their own views. The human error has some 15 other parameters behind it, which includes institutional lapses.
Yeah.
But I think that is also an element that causes a fair bit of emotional friction to people.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you explain that? Can you expand that just a little bit? The various layers and meanings of human error, so that people understand. Again, very important.
Yeah. So I plan to write on that a little, because it's a very challenging subject to try and explain to the civilians. So I still have to think a lot about it. But simply put, human error in the simplest form means that when you've done an accident investigation, you've realized that the accident happened because the pilot at control made a mistake. Now, that mistake has a cause behind it. That cause could be training. You have not trained the pilot appropriately. That cause could be inexperience. That cause could be psychological. That cause could be disorientation. Tons of causes behind it, right? And in this case, if we bring it back to the MiG-21, the lack of experience on this particular type and the gap that people had to cover was a cause.
Yeah.
Was absolutely a cause, but it got attributed as human error.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. My most fond memories of the MiG-21, bittersweet, because during the Kargil War, which I covered by ground and also by air, there was Ajay Ahuja, who was lost in a MiG-21 crash. Nachiketa went to look for him, got shot down. And so there was, on the one hand, that loss of Ahuja's MiG-21. But on the other hand, you had the MiG-21 performing admirably well in many of the roles it was assigned in Kargil. And, when we were talking about MiG-21s, and I just thought I would share this experience. I was on a Mirage 2000 on the 31st of July, which is my birthday. 1999. And this was just a couple of days after the war ended. It was one among 3 sorties which I had flown with Mirage 2000s coming out of Adhampur. And the link over here is the MiG-21 because I had the opportunity, and you're going to see those shots in this podcast.
In this podcast,
right?
yeah.
Anviti, please pull out those shots, Thank you. Of MiG-21s in the air, which I filmed. And we're flying over the Kargil range. And it is just incredible. And, it just brings back so many memories.
Yes.
Because right from 1962, of course, it didn't participate in the 62 war, obviously. But right till Balakot, it was, or the day after Balakot, 2019, it's been involved. And who knows, it would certainly have been on a very advanced state of alert for Op Sindoor. It still is.
Yeah.
Right? If the balloon goes up,
Until it retires.
if there are threats to the formations, you bet your bottom dollar that they'll be up over there with their R-77 and R-73 missiles looking to intercept Pakistani planes.
Yeah.
They're still there, and the Bison which we now operate, we keep talking about 62 old variants. This is an ancient plane, this, that, and the other. It's old, it's dated, it needs to be replaced. But the final variant of the MiG-21, the Bison, is contemporary as of date.
Yeah.
It has it fitted with an Israeli jammer, fitted with 2 long-range missiles, and the A-11 or the R-73, which is an extremely advanced close-range air-to-air missile, and a decent radar, a partial sort of glass cockpit, and a good pilot with a helmet mounted side. It's one heck of a plane.
And, one of the most iconic pictures from just after Kargil, and I
Yeah.
know you visited that site
Yeah.
right after in a helicopter, which then got
Right.
shot at,
Yeah.
was Squadron Leader Bundela's MiG-21 shooting down an
I
Atlantic
met him.
maritime patrol aircraft, right? So
That's such a memory, Shiv. Sorry to interrupt you, but there's another one over here.
you were there, so you're allowed to interrupt.
So I was on this Mi-8 helicopter, and this is shortly after Bundela had shot down the Pakistani Atlantic right after the Kargil war. We were in the North Gujarat region. We were flying to the Rann of Kutch. The Pakistanis fired a missile at us. It's a formation of 3 Mi-8 helicopters. The Mi-8 which I was in was the last one in that formation. It had a drum in the middle of the cabin, a drum of fuel.
Wow.
Right.
Right.
I mean, if they needed to ignite anything, then that was. And it was the pilot in my helicopter who actually heard and spotted an explosion to his right. And then many years later, I chased down this pilot, met him in Congo, and then spoke to him later on as well. And I said that, is that really true that they fired us? I said, yes, they fired at us. We were slightly out of the range. I saw and heard the detonation. I let the other two know. And then we landed back in Nalia. And over there, we met a young pilot. Whether in Nalia or Nal, I forget. We met a young pilot, and there was Bundela standing over there. He had his aviator Ray-Ban type sunglasses over there, standing around like that. Pumped up. He had shot down that Atlantic,
Yeah.
and there is that incredible photo
Yeah.
of an A-8 Aphid missile. I use NATO designation.
With
I
its
find it a
vapor.
bit easier.
Yeah.
And you see the gun side or the missile side or whatever it is sort of homing in. Moments later,
Yeah.
that Atlantic, would have been hit, and a short while after that, it would have gone down.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last time that an Indian Air Force MiG-21 took down, a Pakistani maritime transport, of course, it was involved with the F-16 shoot
Yeah,
down
the
as well,
Balakot as well.
with Abhinandan. But just think about it. Here was Abhinandan, another hero MiG-21
Yeah.
guy, knowing fully well that there are AMRAAM armed F-16s
Yeah.
on the other side, right? They had the JF-17 as well deployed at that stage. No one really knew about how good their Chinese long-range air-to-air missiles were. Here's a pilot, took off from Srinagar, did exactly what the MiG-21 was meant to. He went, bumped up the gas, went into afterburner, got into Pakistani territory, started hunting for targets, switched on his radar, picked up a target, fired his missile. Now, what ultimately happened, the Indian Air Force believes, of course, that there was an F-16 shot down, but he ejected. But the fact of the matter is, this is the confidence that pilots had on the MiG-21.
Yeah.
And that also explains the gung-ho spirit of Indian Air Force pilots. I mean, just think about it. Here was a pilot who took his MiG-21 into Pakistan in 2019. in a target-rich environment saying, I'm going to knock down a
Yeah.
couple of these guys.
What-
And I would tell you, he wasn't looking for one. He
No,
was
no.
possibly looking for more.
And Vishnu, there's a very interesting point around the 2019 incident that you're talking about. You know, there's a lens people wear which says, why was the MiG-21 there? Why didn't we have the MiG-29? Why didn't we have the Su-30? And people don't know there was no other aircraft capable of being at Srinagar at that time other than the MiG-21. It has the shortest scramble time till date. We have replaced it with a MiG-29 in Srinagar. I hate to say this, it is not ideal for Srinagar, even today. A MiG-21 today is more ideal than the units we have there, because you don't have a gyro, you have a single engine, light it, off you go. And therefore, even today, in the last 8 to 10 years or longer, MiG-21 has been our ORP guardian. It is the jet that scrambles. You put small detachments across all our forward bases. Imagine with the MiG-21 going away, who's supposed to fill that shoe?
Who is supposed to fill that shoe? It's
Well,
supposed to be the LCA.
It is supposed to be the LCA.
Yeah.
And I hope it does.
We're opening that chapter now, are we, Shiv?
We've Vishnu and I have gotten into that a little bit in one of our previous episodes. But Anchit, you tell me, who's filling that gap? Are we ready to fill that gap? 36 MiG-21s are gone in September.
Yeah.
Who's stepping in?
It has to be the LCA. None of the other aircraft are capable of playing that role at the moment. It has to be. We are absolutely dependent on it. That was the big reason why the LCA mimics the MiG-21 design so much. It was expected to be a very similar interceptor air defense fighter, quick to scramble. And of course, it can do a lot many more things. It is modern in many other ways, but this is bread and butter and still relevant. I think Op Sindoor, this has been another lesson. The forward air bases are still very relevant and important.
Yeah.
But tell us about some of, some crazy MiG-21 stories. It was a crazy plane at one level. What are some of the stories which really sort of fascinate you? Anyone?
No, I think it's firstly it's just a very lovable aircraft. When you look at that aircraft, it is magnificent. It has more beauty to a av geek, to a flyer, than any other aircraft. There have been 11,000 pilots in the Indian Air Force over the last 90 years. About 3,500 would have been fighter pilots. The remaining would have been chopper or transport pilots. Out of those 3,500, at least 2,000 would have flown the MiG-21.
Wow.
So 2/3, right?
At
Easy.
least 2/3.
Easy, at
Easy.
least. Yeah.
I have not come across a pilot who has flown the MiG-21 and does not like it. That is rare. That is very rare.
But let's segue then into the geekery, which viewers, Shiv wouldn't allow me to start the program with this.
But-
just so that we know that, he calls the shots
I have-
sometimes and it's like, we should be geeking from the first minute.
You've been
He said,
geeking
don't
from the
geek
start.
from the beginning.
Yeah.
This is what he told me.
He
Anchit is
Anchit is just smiling politely because he's had a long drive here. And I promise I'm going to let you geek all you want about the MiG-21. And maybe we'll do another episode as well, even if Anchit refuses to come back. But before you start your geekery, please, with your permission, one more question just to close the loop on the training aspect of it, because this is something that I'm curious about as well. When I became a defense correspondent, it was 2004, 21 years ago. I've known Vishnu since then, by the way. The Hawk deal was on the table.
Yeah.
And it was a story that was being reported in the press a lot. The Hawk advanced jet trainer deal with the Brits. And one of the first things I came to know as a young cub defense reporter was that this defense deal had been on the table for years and years and years, and had been one of the longest delayed, meandering deals, which Vishnu has reported for many years before that as well. And then it finally came to fruition in 2007. I think it still holds the record for the deal that took the longest from the time it was envisaged to the time it was signed, was about 18, 19 years.
Other than the LCA.
And the picture that I showed you
Other than
from
the LCA.
Anchit's tweet is a picture of that aircraft, the Hawk Advanced Jet Trainer. I want you to explain that bit for us. How could something take that long? if it was this crucial to the Air Force?
See, I think priorities. That is the answer. You are always struggling to 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 manage your threat assessment. Just imagine in that period of early 80s, 84, when the Indian Air Force reached out to the government and said, "Listen, we want an advanced jet trainer." What was happening at that time? Pakistan was buying F-16s. We were responding with the MiG-23. We were responding with the Mirage, and a few years later with the MiG-29. The threat perception and the priorities were very different. And I just, of course, there is a lot of detail behind it, but I just feel that the AJT just did not get the priority that it should have got from the government in that, because it is not a visible loss. You do not realize the impact of a poor trainer or the lack of a trainer till you lose a pilot.
Yeah.
And that is one visible loss. What you do not realize is the lack of combat effectiveness that you will have if you don't have trained pilots in the appropriate manner.
Incredible, incredible. I still can't believe it was 18 years. How many articles must you have written or done stories about the Hawk? That this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Oh, it's going to be signed next month. Oh, there's a delegation going to the UK. Oh, there's a British aerospace delegation coming to Delhi.
CCS has cleared it.
Wow. Painful, painful.
We lingered on with the Hunter, which, there was this unit called HOF2, Hunter Operations, Operational Flying Training Unit in Kalaikunda.
Yeah.
We just lingered on with it for the longest possible time. Of course, we still had some Hunter squadrons, but effectively it was being used as an AGT in some sense for people going on to, young pilots going on to the MiG-21. The Air Force was trying everything possible to bridge that gap. I do remember, now they're retired officers, some are serving still as air marshals, but these were young pilots who had just come to the unit when my father was flight commander, 15 Squadron. And, I still hear stories when they come to our house and meet my father, and they talk about how scared they were. Straight out of the Kiran and the Iskara, posted to a MiG-21 bis squadron and getting there. And they used to be shit scared to try and land. That was the toughest. 320 kilometers an hour, you're coming in, lining up, touchdown, and my dad tells me he used to just bugger on the seat from the back. Do it. Push it.
God.
Get the fear out of your mind.
And then, it's a bit wobbly. It's 320 kilometers. It's like landing a rocket. Touchdown over there. The undercarriage is sort of wobbles just a bit. Nose wheel goes down. The chute comes out. Hit the brakes. Dethrottle, hit the brakes, and slow down really fast.
And that's about what, double the landing speed of other
Most
fighters?
other
No,
most
MiG-25
other
was even scarier.
Yes.
That's the one that you saw
Yeah,
the last.
yeah.
The trainers were on an average 120 to 150. So this was 300.
Wow.
plus. So that's the shift that you had to make.
So let's geek out now, just a little bit. The first MiG-21 was nothing but a rocket engine with a missile. The R11 engine, it had a 30mm cannon, the first one.
The first one had.
Right, and it had a K-13 missile. Let's talk about the missile. First generation Soviet air-to-air missiles. This was called the AA-1, Atoll by NATO. They didn't really work, did they?
They searched the earth rather than the aircraft. The consistent problem was that it was homing in on the ground.
Right.
Pathetic, absolutely pathetic.
We would have had a kill of a missile in 65, right?
Yes,
So it missed. The missiles missed.
Missiles missed. So this is the Mally Woolen was flying, and he got onto the tail of a Sabre in the 65 war.
In a MiG-21.
In a MiG-21. This is the second variant, the Type 76. The Type 74 had a cannon and a missile, but it did not have a radar. And so the next version that came, it got the radar, but it had to give up something, so it gave up the cannon. So it had the radar and the missile, and Mally Woolen went after this Sabre, got him on the gun sight, shot twice. Both the missiles he shot, because it had two hard points for what it could do. Both missed, and he came. It is said he came back fuming to the room and said, "For the want of a gun, I lost the war."
Oh my God.
And then started the Air Force's this thing that we need to change this. This was the time when the world, in aviation world, was fighting over gun versus missile. That debate was going on, which is the way to go ahead. And the Air Force said, I want both.
No, and it's also true that this wasn't uniquely a Soviet problem. First generation Sidewinders were fairly hopeless as well. Again, in terms of the quality of their infrared seekers, what some would just sort of home in to the sun itself, all sorts of infrared missiles.
Yeah.
There have been 7 variants of MiG-21s, right till the Bison, from the Type 74 to the Bison. Um, but then the guns came back. So it started with the guns, and it then went on to no guns, and then with the Type MiG-21 FL, the Type 77, the gun came back, albeit in a gun pod.
Yes.
And you added the pod, you lost on fuel. And the MiG-21 didn't exactly have much fuel in the first place.
It didn't. It didn't. But we wanted the gun. We wanted the gun. It also came with a better engine, so that helped a little bit. And then even within the types there were variants which we have all forgotten. But the radar kept changing. The radar kept improving on the Type 70.
So the R2L radar.
Yes. Yes.
Which is basic search, very basic search.
Very basic search. But it did improve the efficacy of the K-13 missile a little bit, which came to fore during the 1971 war. And actually, it was the type. It was also the first type that we started using in a ground attack configuration, and that's why in 1971 it won the sobriquet of runway busters. It was the Type 77 FL, and this was also the first type that HAL manufactured. So we manufactured, I think, 240 or so of these over a period of time.
197, I think, HAL manufactured.
197 manufactured.
And
the rest
38
were
bought.
flown away
Yeah,
straight.
38 or so bought.
Yes. So total 240-ish is what we had. And initially it was our most favored type that we had of the MiG-21. And the FL is also the one that became the AGT effectively. Because as we improved the variants, we went to Type 96, we went to BIS, we went to Bison. The FL continued to serve, and we didn't have a AGT, and we said, okay, we have so many FLs, what do we do with it? And so the FL is the one that got modified, went into all the type trainer squadrons, it went into MOF2, and it was flying till 2013 or so with the conversion units.
Right. And then, of course, various versions of the MiG-21U. Some bought from Poland and Romania, and several from the Soviet Union.
I think all AV geeks run away when we start to talk about MiG-21 trainers. There are so many variants, so many different configurations from so many different countries that we have bought.
And let's just face it, aesthetically not the most pleasing to look at.
Not at all.
The trainer, right?
The
Yeah.
trainer.
Oh man, yeah. It's one ugly beast.
Yes. There's one, but we needed the trainer. In that aircraft, the trainer was absolutely essential given all the challenges that we were facing with getting pilots up to speed.
I was in Srinagar a couple of years back. Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria was still the chief. Then he flew a MiG-21 sortie. And he insisted on flying a MiG-21 sortie. Successive chiefs would do that, to make a point that, look, whatever it is, we're going to fly those blades. So I remember that, the trainer sort of coming down, and then Bhadoria getting out of it, Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria getting out of it. And then, asking him the same question that, sir, how was it? He says, it's always a unique experience.
But very interestingly, something we found out very recently, Angad and I were writing that article on the air-to-air missile evolution.
This is Anchit Singh, another great writer
Yes.
and photographer and a friend and an AV geek. He
We
takes it very personally if
But-
you
no, by the way-
say something minutely wrong.
No, I
About
want to
some-
make
yeah.
a point about Angad Singh on this podcast because I know he will be watching this. He was supposed to be on this podcast as well. I want to tell all of our viewers watching this that Angad Singh was supposed to be here along with Anchit, but Angad Singh is a fuss pot.
Yes.
Okay, and he is not willing to make the long trek that Anchit has made. So I am promising both Angad and to all of our viewers and listeners that we will bring him back for another episode along with Anchit at some point.
Yeah, we
That's
must
a
do
promise.
that.
He owes me one for this now.
No, absolutely. He's multifaceted, just
Yeah.
multifaceted when it
He's
comes
brilliant.
to aviation.
Yes.
Absolutely phenomenal.
So we found out a very interesting, the next variant that came up, which was the MiG-21M or Type 96.
M
or
and MF, right? Both of them.
it used to be
Type
called
96.
MF, Type 96, and HL called it Type 88.
Yes.
So the same aircraft was called by multiple names, but the most common it went by M and Type 96 in the Air Force. Again, it improved on the FL. The gun pod over a period of time became integral. The engine was better. The radar was better.
The
Uh, we-
Gasha gun, the Gasha 23L,
Yes,
which is still around
which is still around.
on the Tejas.
Yes.
It's a great gun. You don't
Hmm.
really need to change the gun per se. I mean, it's how you use the gun to target different
You
things.
may now debate whether the gun is needed now or not, but that's a debate raging since the 60s. So that continues. But there was a very different missile on the MiG-21M, which we didn't really know about because it didn't get used much, but it was the K5.
Yes.
Uh,
Tell us about the K5.
So it was a missile that was an improvement on the K-13, but it came from a variant of the K-13 and therefore went in a different family
So
nomenclature.
this is what the AA2 would be, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
This is the
This
AA2.
is similar to the Chinese PL2, PL5
Right.
in that it was similar to that. Equally disastrous.
I see.
Equally disastrous in efficacy. But we tried that on the MiG-21. But later on, in fact, this was an anecdote that Angat told me on speaking to Air Chief Marshal Dhanoa, who flew a lot of the MiG-21M. He was with 101 Squadron, and even 17 Squadron was on the same aircraft. That they got quite better at it later on. They learned how to use the K5 effectively, and the efficacy quite improved later on, which I was quite surprised about. So that was the other missile, but missiles on the MiG-21 remained ineffective till we got the Magic Matra, which came with the BIS. If I'm
There
not
was
wrong,
the AA8 as well. Which was used to shoot down the Atlantic. I've forgotten what the Russian or Soviet designation of that would be.
it was, if I'm not wrong, it was the 27 R27.
R20.
If
So we'll have to check on
we'll
that.
have to check. I'll
yeah.
have to recollect that, but I think it was that one. You're right.
Yeah.
But it was the magic that gave them the confidence, the BIS pilots, that we now have a. I like I said, I still remember my father saying very proudly, we were the first Magic Squadron. The 15 Squadron got it first and displayed it. That is when we, I think, got the confidence that we can actually use it in a and ultimately got to the BVR capability with the Bison.
But this is an interesting point, Shiv. He's talking about a French missile,
Yes.
Jugaad fitted on a
Soviet
plane
fighter. Yeah.
by Indians, right? If you look at the Bison itself, there were Israeli systems, there were Indian systems, there were Russian systems, and weapons from all over the world.
Yeah.
Right? Quite spectacular in terms of how this was a hodgepodge of technology and still made it work.
It's one of the reasons why I think the Indian Air Force is such a fascination for avgeeks around the world.
Yeah.
Because of the variety of aircraft we've had. Look at the variety that both of you have just talked about for the last 10 minutes while I have listened patiently about the different variants of the
But we haven't even
MiG-21, and you
gotten-
still haven't named all of them, I'm guessing.
No, but there are two of them which are critical, of course, which is the MiG-21 BIS.
Yes.
I mean,
Which is
when
the
I-
Type
when-
75. Yes.
When Shiv and I started journalism, me a few years before him, the Indian Air Force was a MiG-21 BIS. This thing,
Absolutely.
with a handful of Mirages here and there. And
What did the
29.
no?
It was
uh,
primarily
please
a
tell us
MiG-21 BIS aircraft.
what did the BIS do to the MiG-21?
The BIS is what I believe fundamentally put it in the air defense domain. From the interceptor, we had started moving down the path of ground attack and some bit of FR fighter recon role. We were obviously using it in air defense, but it is the BIS that really made it a very formidable air defense fighter.
Yeah.
That is the big, and that gave a lot of confidence to the Air Force because the NAT's effectiveness was dwindling in the 70s and 80s. The serviceability was, and you needed someone else which could fill those shoes of the NATs with the aircraft that PAF had at that time. So I think this is, in my view, the big achievement for the Air Force in a big way was air defense, really making air defense its base.
A question that I must ask on this podcast, Vishnu, if you'll permit me, is because a lot of people will be wondering this as well. And, on Control All Defense, we always answer questions that people have, which is there will be those in the public who'll say, hey, listen, Anchit says this is a great fighter. And even now, it's probably the most suitable to be deployed in Srinagar. And as Vishnu just said, they were probably on standby during Operation Sindoor. In 2019, they were literally used in combat. So why retire them at all then? So why are they being retired?
I think, an aircraft can fly for a long time, but it becomes tougher and tougher to keep it airworthy. And in this case, given Soviet Union has collapsed in its own way, the entire getting the spare parts, getting all of that is tougher. Also, I think airframe composite metals now being used in airframe are of a different generation, which you can't change, which you can't fully change. Could it have continued to be upgraded? Absolutely. I somehow feel, I could be totally wrong, this is my gut feel, I think the Air Force just got tired of the bashing that it was getting from the public, from the government, and said, I don't have the energy to continue battling to defend the MiG-21 and trying to tell the world that the Bison is very different from the Type 74. Don't compare it, don't compare it, don't compare it. And in between was the flying coffin uh, uh, stigma. And I think I just feel, I have never heard it from any officer. It's just my gut feel of the
No, but
situation.
let me answer that also partly, Shiv. I do believe that the MiG-21 is done and dusted. Just as an old Corvette would be eternal, right? You can pull it out of the garage and you can make it race down a highway, an open one, without any police, of course. But it'll always be that. Modern aircraft are all fly-by-wire. The ease of using fly-by-wire systems has redefined aviation. They are much more reliable. There are fewer moving parts, much more accuracy, much more precision. Uh, if you look at the shut lines of the weld of a MiG-21, even of the Bison, you'll be asking yourself, is this seriously going to fly?
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, fairly prehistoric in terms of its build. If you compare that with the newer variations or newer build Tejas aircraft coming in, the fit and finish of those planes is something else. We mastered carbon composite technology. We've got large structures of the airframe, which are one-piece units. Then, of course, the range of the MiG-21, never great, just not good enough. The engine itself, which I think is the R25 engine, right, for the Bison is,
Yes.
not very reliable compared to, let's say, the G404 engine on the Tejas fighter itself. There hasn't been any integration done, with, let's say, the Darby missile. It uses a Russian air-to-air missile, the A-10, the AA-12 Archer is what NATO designates that, which has been found to be not ideal, outranged by the AMRAAM on the day after Balakot, and perhaps something the Air Force wants to replace. Visibility in the cockpit, even though the Bison has a modified canopy, still not the greatest. And these are just a handful of issues. But I think what Anchit speaks about, maintaining this fleet indefinitely, that would have been a problem.
Yeah.
If it could be theoretically upgraded and extended for a while longer, what do you think would need to be done to it, Anchit? You have an upgrade budget and you've got 36 MiG-21s. What
No,
would you want
I
done
think
with it?
I think Vishnu is right. Upgrading it beyond this point is going to be tough, because now the upgrades that you need to do start to affect the airframe.
Yeah.
Start to affect the cockpit. And those are tough to do. You can add weapons, you can add radar, you can add all that paraphernalia, but you can't really change the airframe. And that limitation is now, of course, starting to show.
Yeah.
Just as one sort of addition to that point, if you had to keep the MiG-21 going, you would need to give it an AESA radar. Now, if you look at the very unique radar configuration of the MiG-21, it's sort of in that inlet, which is part of the the overall structure of the engine. The radar itself would be quite small. And the larger the aperture of an AESA radar, an active electronically scanned phased array radar, the more effective it is. So you would need a very small AESA seeker over there. The number of transmit receive modules would be limited. But more than that, how would these be cooled? In the case of all AESA radars, cooling, which means abundant electrical supply, is a real factor. The power requirements of an AESA radar are significant. I would suspect that engineering that onto a MiG-21 would be
difficult or impossible.
impossible, possibly.
That'll be, your missile point, the magic on the MiG-21. Yeah, has a very interesting sidebar to this. We think Soviets have been great to us as a defense support. I think the biggest have been French.
I agree completely.
From the time of the Tufanis, I wrote about the emergency procurement in 1952-53 recently. we were in a really bad state, and they gave us Tufanis. Then they gave us Mistairs. They gave us, Jags. You can put on them as well. They gave us the Mirage, and now the Rafale, and numerous weapon integrations when we needed.
We, of course, did weapons integration, which didn't please them very much on the MiG Mirage 2000.
During Kargil.
During Kargil.
During Kargil.
Yeah, they were pretty upset about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. They were.
Even now, apparently, to upgrade the Rafale even more with some Indian weapon systems and our demand, reportedly, that we see code, they are very happy about that. Excusez-moi, no code.
No, but what
That
were
is not happening.
what were the Russians like with the Indian Air Force over the course of the MiG-21 relationship?
I think the Russian relationship was a lot larger and broader. They had us all over. For example, and we're bringing the ghost of Angat back into this. He's very passionate about the flogger, and he'll tell you how the flogger was kind of pushed down our throat by the Russians.
The MiG-23.
The MiG-23 at that time, with the threat of the
F-16.
F-16. Whereas, we were already going down the path with the Mirage to really counter it effectively. So I think it's a bittersweet relationship. The Soviet relationship is a bittersweet relationship. They allowed us to survive with our meager budgets, but they extracted the pound of flesh for it.
Final question then, Vishnu. 36 MiG-21 Bisons will be retired come September. End of an era is a phrase you'll see a lot used, I'm sure, during our coverage at that time. I know I used it on my show a couple of days ago as well because, frankly, you can't say it better than end of an era. And I think this podcast pretty much proves that it is an end of an era. Something that you said, Anchit, that will stick with me is that you've never spoken to a MiG-21 pilot who has not said that he likes the aircraft or said that he didn't like the aircraft, right? So this is a legacy that is going to stick around for a while. The ghosts of the MiG-21 are going to be in people's hearts for a while because there are simply so many pilots who've flown them.
Absolutely. I think the MiG-21 defined the Indian Air Force.
Yeah.
An Air Force is about using an aircraft in various ways. All the tactics moving from being a ground attack to an interceptor to an air defense to a fighter recon. The MiG-21 was Indian Air Force's test bed at scale. And so I would say the MiG-21 defined the Indian Air Force and really led it to where it is today. That all that institutional learning can now be passed down to the next generation of fighters to continue to build it. There is what it has done for the Indian Air Force can't actually be put in words.
So are we going to see the chief fly the last sortie?
I hope so.
Yeah.
He's a flogger guy though, but I hope so.
He has MiG-21 experience as well,
Yes.
though, fairly extensive.
I think anyone of his generation couldn't have skipped flying the MiG-21 at least early on.
What's going to happen to those 36 MiG-21s? Will they be in different museums and put everywhere?
Well, there would be a
Ways?
couple of them in museums. There are plenty of, I would say that there's a fair amount of life associated with a few systems in that. For example, the jammers, the outboard jammers, which the MiG-21 can be fitted with, they'd be sort of redeployed here and there. The missiles would go into the MiG-29 and the Su-30 fleet. I'm talking about the AA-12 and the AA-11 common missiles, as it were. There'd be a couple of Israeli systems, as I mentioned, possibly taken off.
You should get one of those aircraft for your garden or something.
I need a
In
garden.
your huge mansion in South Delhi. We'll speak to the Air Force and maybe get like a cut price airframe and you can put it up with a nice little... Yeah, Vishnu can afford it for sure. He can afford
Right.
it. You can get a nice one. It'll be a pity to see all of them like junked and stuff. I'm sure some of them are at least going to be
I think some of them are going to be fly-worthy actually for
Okay.
a while.
vintage squadrons.
No,
It
that too.
has to go in the vintage squadron.
It has to go in the heritage flight. I really hope so.
was
We
gonna
are
ask
hoping that the flogger gets there too, if we can. But there is a policy to keep an aircraft in wartime reserves in a flyworthy condition
Oh.
if we have to. Because see, the pilots, it'll be a while before the current lot of pilots forgets how to fly a MiG-21.
Yeah.
So if it really push comes to shove and we are short of aircraft and we need to really go down to a wartime reserve, we always keep a few. There's a very secretive policy around which aircraft for how long is kept and how are they maintained. And
So these are mothballed and kept.
they're mothballed and kept, but some are kept in a condition that they can be brought to life quickly.
That is.
The takeaway?
I want to rub my hands when I hear
I
that.
had
That's
never
great.
heard of
I
that.
hope they do that for the MiG-21 for a while. I
Yeah.
suspect they would, given our overall squadron strength.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And but speaking of the heritage flight,
Yes.
you're saying that the MiG-23 and maybe a MiG-21
I
or two
hope
could
I
come
hope
back?
the MiG-23 they moved there. There was I heard some chatter couple of years back and recently that they may be considering it. There were obviously maintenance and logistical challenges, but it's in Hindon, the heritage flight. It doesn't currently have a jet. No, it flies a Dakota, a Tiger Moth, and a Spit that
Harvard.
barely
Yeah,
Harvard.
yeah.
Yes. So I hope they move the MiG-23, and I really hope they keep the MiG-21
Surely
flying.
there'd be enough space to support one of
Oh,
them
MiG-21
in India.
definitely.
And MiG-23 also, I'm sure there must
Yeah.
be an inventory of space
Yeah.
just sort of lying over there. What I found very sad when you look at Kalaikunda Air Base sometimes on satellite
graveyard there.
imagery, the graveyard
Uh,
of floggers.
The graveyard of floggers.
27s, MiG-27. They're just sort of dispersed all over the place, you know. I mean, just sort of like
It's a very
junk.
poignant image of that
is
in
sad.
Kalaikunda because Kalaikunda has a lot of greenery.
Yeah.
It rains a lot and it's in the delta area, so it gets green. And so you see these floggers with moss growing all over it
oh wow.
and canopies of the greenery all around, and you have a
Earth
near-
reclaiming the
A
floggers.
ghostly sort of flogger aircraft
Yeah,
in between.
so it's a very poignant image in a way.
Well, I hope the MiG-21s don't go the same way. One of them will be in Vishnu's garden, and maybe a few others will be in central Delhi and in museums around the country. Certainly need them, and looking forward to seeing the MiG-21s in the heritage flight. I'd love to see a flogger. I know Angad would as well, and so much more. But this has been amazing. I learned a lot from the both of you.
Yeah.
I was happy to listen for most of this podcast, but yeah, the MiG-21 is like it's like a permanent presence if you're a defense correspondent. It's always there. I can't think of the number of air exercises we've been to, Vishnu,
Where it's always a part.
where we've seen MiG-21 pilots and MiG-21 aerobatics and things like that. So yeah, even though I haven't had very much to do directly with the MiG-21, there's a sense of poignancy that I feel as well as we go to it. But I agree with Vishnu. I think it's done and dusted.
Yeah.
There are those who rightfully felt strongly about the MiG-21, but then there are the pilots themselves, their families, and an entire country for which this aircraft served for 62 years. Incredible. It's not the same aircraft that came in, but it is the MiG-21 that is being retired now. So Anchit, thank you. It's been an incredible pleasure speaking to you, and I know Vishnu we're going to be bringing him back because the MiG-21 isn't the only thing he talks about. He's working on more things, like he just told us, and he's writing a book as well. So
Yeah.
we should make this a permanent thing.
We should
Anything
do
more
that.
you want to add?
No, thank you so much. The MiG-21 story is something which we're going to keep tracking on Control Alt Defense. The Indian Air Force, the MiG-21 Air Force. No two ways about it. It still is until such time as it's not, which is going to be in a finite period of time. We do hope you've liked this episode of Control Alt Defense. There's going to be so much more which comes up on this program as we bring to you, our viewers and our listeners, every aspect of the armed forces. And of course, given our interest in technical matters and aviation and aircraft, there'll be a lot of that thrown in. Thanks very much.
Thank you.